Imagine the United States government just allowing the world's most powerful artificial intelligence weapons to be shipped directly to its biggest geopolitical rival.
Right. I mean, on the surface, it sounds like complete strategic self-sabotage.
Exactly. It really does. But then you look closer and you realize Washington has essentially installed this massive digital toll booth.
Yeah, they're taking a 25% cut of every single sale.
A 25% cut just to fund their own initiatives. So suddenly, what looks like a broken system is actually a highly engineered, managed bottleneck.
And that tension between a system breaking down and a completely new architecture basically being forced into existence, that is the defining characteristic of our current global economy right now.
Mm-hmm.
When the old lanes of commerce or physics or, even biology get completely gridlocked, human engineering doesn't just wait for the traffic to clear.
Right, they don't just sit there.
No, they bypass the highway entirely.
And uncovering those ingenious bypasses is our mission today. So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive designed specifically for you, the learner.
We've got a lot to cover.
We really do. Today, we are looking at a stack of sources that span, honestly, the entire spectrum of global bottlenecks. We have macroeconomic reports on inflation and escalating conflicts.
The heavy stuff.
Yeah, very heavy. Plus high-tech export licenses, automotive press releases, and even biotech FDA approvals.
And looking at these documents side by side, it really reveals a distinct pattern. We are watching massive constraints force rapid evolution across multiple, seemingly unrelated disciplines.
Which is why you are the perfect guy to help us weave these disparate threads together. We're going to explore how a spike in crude oil ripples directly into the Federal Reserve, how that U.S. government AI chip toll booth actually functions.
That one is fascinating.
It's wild. And then we'll look at how the new electric BMW i3 has basically become a rolling supercomputer to solve grid fragility. And finally, how a newly FDA-approved pill literally hacks the body's immune pathways.
To bypass the digestive system entirely.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. And we'll start with the most disruptive, immediate bottleneck on the global stage right now, the macro squeeze.
Yeah, the geopolitical situation is really acting as the primary choke point here. We are currently watching an escalating war involving Iran that is directly targeting the literal arteries of the global energy system.
The sources detail this massive tit-for-tat escalation. I mean, Israel struck Iran's South Pars gas field,
Which just happens to be the largest natural gas field in the world.
And the retaliatory strike from Iran was equally surgical and honestly devastating. They hit Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG terminal.
Yeah.
We are not talking about a delayed shipping container here. These are the premier liquefied natural gas facilities on the planet just being knocked offline.
And the market reaction was incredibly violent. I mean, European natural gas futures spiked 25% almost instantly.
Wow, 25%.
Yeah. And Brent crude shot up to $116 a barrel, which, sent an immediate shockwave through global equities.
I saw the Morningstar Europe index drop 2% in a single day.
It did. And it is now down nearly 8% since the fighting started. So it's basically on track for its worst month since June 2022.
Yeah.
When energy costs spike that aggressively, it forces the manufacturing and transport sectors to fundamentally alter their capital expenditure strategies. The cost of making and moving anything just skyrocketed.
And that external chaos lands directly on the desk of the Federal Reserve.
Exactly.
They have to decide how to manage the domestic economy when the global energy grid is practically on fire. Their immediate move was to hold interest rates steady at the 3.5 to 3.75% range.
Right.
But doing that while the U.S. economy just shed 92,000 jobs in February creates this brutal scenario.
You really does.
They are staring down the barrel of stagflation, so shrinking employment while supply-side shocks drive up prices.
Well, what's fascinating here is how the Federal Reserve is attempting to look through what they call the fog of conflict.
The fog of conflict, right.
Yeah. They are holding the line, basically banking on the hope that this energy inflation is strictly transitory. They're actually still projecting one rate cut later in 2026.
Even with everything going on.
Even though this crisis forced them to raise their overall inflation forecast for the year to 2.7%, yeah. The central bank is essentially frozen. They're unable to cut rates to save jobs because doing so might pour gasoline on the inflation fire sparked by, $116 oil.
Which brings us to the political friction, right? Because In an election cycle, losing jobs while prices go up is a powder keg.
Oh, absolutely.
The sources note that President Trump is heavily pushing for Fed Chair Jerome Powell to lower rates and essentially exit his role early. He's already nominated Kevin Warsh as his replacement.
Right. And concurrently, Powell is facing a Department of Justice probe.
Yeah, originating from U.S. Attorney Jeanine Pirro's office, I believe.
Exactly. The investigation centers around federal building renovations. And it's worth noting the subpoenas for that probe were recently quashed by a judge.
Right, the judge noted them as a pretext to pressure Powell.
Yeah. Though Pirro's office is currently appealing that decision.
It just feels like the American economy is a massive cargo ship trying to thread a needle in a narrow canal while someone keeps violently yanking the fabric in different directions.
That's a great way to put it.
You have the geopolitical winds blowing one way with the energy shock, and then intense political pressure blowing the other regarding monetary policy. So, mechanically speaking, based on the text, if Powell is ousted before his term ends in May, what actually happens to the Fed board?
Well, Powell has stated firmly he will not resign until the probe is completely, unequivocally over.
Well,
But the procedural mechanics of the board are really crucial to understand here.
okay.
If his term expires in May and a successor like Warsh hasn't been confirmed by the Senate, Powell doesn't just leave.
Oh, he stays.
Yeah, he becomes chair pro tempore and stays in his seat. However, if he were to vacate the position early, President Trump, who has already appointed 7 governors to the board, would gain a definitive majority. It really highlights the immense fragility governing the monetary bottleneck of the United States.
Yeah, so the macro layer is defined by these intense gridlock standoffs. But when we pivot from the macro economy to the physical tech sector, we see a completely different type of bottleneck.
Right, the silicon choke point.
Exactly. We are seeing physical and regulatory limits completely reshape the AI hardware market.
This is where geopolitical strategy basically meets the unyielding laws of physics. The most striking development in the sources is Nvidia officially restarting manufacturing to ship their H200 GPUs to Chinese hyperscalers.
Yeah, companies like ByteDance, Alibaba, and Tencent, they've been approved to buy over 400,000 of these units.
Which is a massive number.
It is. And to understand the gravity of that, the H200 is Nvidia's Hopper generation accelerator. It packs 141 gigabytes of HBM3E memory.
Bleeding-edge hardware.
Yeah, vastly more powerful than the downgraded crippled chips Nvidia was previously manufacturing just to comply with older export limits. So, wait, aren't we in a massive tech war? Why is the U.S. greenlighting our most powerful AI chips for China? It seems completely counterintuitive.
This raises an important question about the evolution of economic warfare, really. The United States isn't executing a total blockade here. They have engineered a managed valve.
A managed valve, okay.
Yeah. Like we mentioned earlier, the U.S. government is taking a 25% cut of the sales revenue from every single one of these shipments.
A 25% tax off the top for the government. That's huge.
Huge. Plus, there's a strict volume cap. Nvidia can only export to China up to 50% of the volume they sell domestically in the U.S.
Oh, I see.
Furthermore, third-party labs must rigorously verify every shipment before it leaves the country. The underlying philosophy, as detailed in the reports, is to compete fiercely for global markets and extract massive revenue from them without conceding those markets unnecessarily.
So they are funding domestic advancement by taxing the exports to their rivals. But the GPUs themselves aren't even the primary physical constraint anymore, are they? Because looking at Micron's massive Q2 fiscal year 2026 earnings, they pulled in $23.9 billion in revenue.
Yeah, which is a staggering 196% increase year over year.
Almost a 200% jump. Because the real bottleneck in AI today is the memory wall.
Right. The processors have become, so ruthlessly fast that they spend the majority of their time just idling.
Just waiting around.
Literally waiting for data to arrive from the memory chips. It's like having the world's fastest bullet train, but the station doors are so narrow that passengers can only board one at a time.
That's a great analogy.
And Micron's earnings report reveals that data center memory demand is expected to cross 50% of the entire total addressable market by 2026.
Over half the global memory supply swallowed up just by data centers.
Yeah, so to widen those station doors, Micron is now shipping HBM4 36GB 12-high chips, and they are already sampling 48GB 16-high chips.
So for those listening, HBM stands for high bandwidth memory, right?
Yes, and the 12-high or 16-high refers to physically stacking the memory dies on top of each other.
Like microscopic skyscrapers.
Exactly, skyscraper style,
Yeah.
to pack as much data as close to the processor as physically possible.
Yeah.
It just slashes the travel time of the data.
And the second order effect of that is wild because the foundries are dedicating so much capacity to building these 16-story memory skyscrapers for AI data centers, consumer tech is starving.
Oh, completely starving.
The reports indicate that PC and smartphone unit production might actually drop in the low double digits this year simply due to memory supply constraints.
Yeah, and the irony is the devices we are building require more memory than ever.
Right. AI PCs mandate 32 gigabytes of RAM or more, and AI phones need a minimum of 12 gigabytes just to run local models.
It's the physical manifestation of cannibalization. The sheer gravity of the AI data center bottleneck is just pulling resources away from everyday consumer electronics.
Which begs the question, where does all this heavily constrained, immensely powerful technology actually end up in our daily lives?
Well, we can look at the automotive industry to find out.
Yes. The new all-electric BMW i3, the new class, launching in August 2026. It's basically the culmination of every bottleneck we've discussed so far.
It really represents a total architectural shift in how consumer vehicles are engineered. It's directly responding to the silicon and energy constraints of the modern era.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Reading the press release for this vehicle feels like reading specs for a rolling server farm.
It's essentially a computer on wheels.
Yeah, the mechanical engineering has been entirely usurped by computing architecture. So instead of a traditional engine block acting as the core, the i3 features 4 superbrain high-performance computers. And the primary unit is literally named the Heart of Joy.
Which is quite the name.
It is.
But by centralizing the electronic control units into these superbrains, the Heart of Joy processes driving dynamics 10 times faster than previous decentralized systems.
10 times faster.
Yeah, the acceleration, the slip control, the steering, it is all software-defined now. It acts as a hyper-responsive central nervous system.
But the brilliance of the i3 isn't just how fast it computes. It's how it interfaces with the macro energy squeeze we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
When natural gas futures spike 25% and the grid is fragile, this car basically becomes a defensive asset. It uses Gen 6 eDrive technology built on an 800-volt architecture.
Which allows for 400 kilowatt DC fast charging.
Right, pushing out an estimated 440 miles of range.
The vital mechanism here, though, is bidirectional charging.
Right. The vehicle-to-load, vehicle-to-home, and vehicle-to-grid capabilities, they're all standard.
Yes. The car is engineered as a mobile power bank. During a severe energy shock, you can feed the energy stored in the car's high-voltage battery back into your house to keep the lights on.
Or even arbitrage the energy, right?
Yeah, by selling it back to the public grid when prices peak. It transforms the consumer from a passive user of a fragile grid into an active, stabilizing node.
It's a localized solution to a global geopolitical bottleneck, and the motors themselves reflect a response to supply chain choke points, too.
They do.
It pushes 463 horsepower and 476 pound-feet of torque using a dual motor setup. So you have an ASM, or asynchronous motor, in the front and an ESM in the rear.
And that ESM, an electrically excited synchronous motor, is crucial.
Why is that?
Well, traditional EV motors rely heavily on permanent magnets, which require rare earth metals. And those metals represent a massive geopolitical supply chain vulnerability.
Because they're often controlled by rival nations.
Exactly. An ESM bypasses that entirely by using electrical currents to generate the magnetic field instead of permanent magnets.
Oh, wow. So BMW engineered a motor that just doesn't need the materials caught up in global trade wars.
They completely bypass the physical constraints.
It's brilliant.
Huh.
They also integrated an AI assistant powered by an Amazon Alexa plus large language model, and they adopted the NACS charge port so it plugs directly into Tesla's ubiquitous supercharger network.
Yeah.
Plus, they built the engine cover out of 30% secondary materials, specifically recycled marine plastic, like old fishing nets.
Every single design choice is about optimizing constrained resources. It is the ultimate example of systems engineering adapting to a world defined by scarcity and friction.
Right. Now, apply that exact same engineering logic to the human body.
This is where it gets really sci-fi.
It really does. We've looked at bypassing rare earth metals and hacking the physics of memory chips. Biotech is currently doing the exact same thing to our biological delivery pathways. Protagonist Therapeutics just secured FDA approval for a groundbreaking drug.
And moving from the macro engineering of the power grid to the microbiology of the immune system reveals the exact same underlying principle of innovation.
So the drug is called icotrokinra, or icotrokinra. It's approved for treating moderate to severe plaque psoriasis in adults and kids 12 and older weighing over 40 kilograms.
Right.
Now, treatments for plaque psoriasis have been around for a while, so what's the actual breakthrough here? We've had psoriasis treatments before.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of systemic bottlenecks, the human digestive tract has historically been an impassable barrier for highly complex biologic medicines.
Oh, okay.
If a patient wanted the extreme efficacy of a targeted biologic to clear their skin plaques, they had to take it via injection. If they swallowed a pill, the stomach acids and digestive enzymes would immediately destroy the large biologic molecules before they could ever reach the bloodstream.
The gut was basically the ultimate gridlock.
Exactly. Patients had to endure the constant friction and discomfort of needles just to get the medicine into their system.
And what Protagonist has achieved with icotide is a structural hack. They engineered the first and only targeted oral peptide that can actually survive the hostile environment of the digestive tract.
Yeah, it slips past the stomach acid intact.
And then it specifically blocks the IL-23 receptor, which essentially shuts off the exact protein pathway that triggers the severe skin inflammation.
So they deliver the high-end efficacy of an injectable biologic through the simple convenience of a once-daily pill.
That's incredible.
By removing the physical friction for the patient, they completely alter the commercial landscape of the treatment.
And the market response to removing that friction is staggering. Protagonist partnered with Johnson & Johnson to scale this bypass.
A massive partnership.
Yeah, and under the mechanics of that deal, Protagonist receives $155 million in development milestones, up to $580 million in future sales milestones, and a 6 to 10% royalty on all net sales.
Plus, they have another major drug in the pipeline.
Right, rusfertide, which just received priority review for its new drug application. The financial reward for solving a biological bottleneck is immense.
Because convenience and compliance are the most valuable currencies in modern medicine. When you eliminate the needle, you open up the treatment to a massively broader demographic.
So what does this all mean? Whether we are talking about a tech company stacking memory chips 16 stories high to feed an AI, or an automotive manufacturer designing a 440-mile electric car that stabilizes the neighborhood power grid.
Or a biotech firm engineering a peptide that survives the stomach to shut down inflammation.
Exactly. The future belongs to whoever can pack the most power into the most efficient, accessible package.
The constraints themselves are what force the elegance of the solution. Without the friction, there is no spark.
Let's briefly retrace the path we just took. We started with the sheer macro chaos geopolitical shocks in the Middle East, striking massive natural gas fields, rocking the oil markets, and forcing the Federal Reserve to hold interest rates steady while navigating intense political turbulence.
Yeah.
We then saw how geopolitical friction led to the U.S. government installing a highly regulated toll booth on Nvidia's AI chip shipments to China, while Micron physically stacks memory architectures to bypass the data center traffic jam.
And we observe those macro and micro constraints physically manifesting in the BMW i3, a vehicle that abandons traditional mechanical engineering to become a supercomputing mobile power plant, using electromagnetism to avoid rare earth supply chains.
Right. And finally, we saw biotech utilize that same logic to bypass the body's digestive constraints, creating a breakthrough oral peptide that hacks the immune system without a needle.
It's all connected.
It really is. And for you listening, this is the hidden architecture of the news cycle.
Okay.
Every headline about persistent inflation, every delayed tech product you are waiting for, and every new medical treatment offered at your clinic. They are not isolated events.
No, not at all.
They are all nodes in this exact same web of supply, demand, and systemic bottlenecks.
Which leaves us with a critical, somewhat provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We've established today how our cars are being fundamentally redesigned to feed and stabilize the public power grid, and how our biological pathways are being successfully managed by highly complex, precisely manufactured synthetic peptides. We are essentially becoming fully integrated, dependent nodes in a massive, sprawling technological network. But considering the intense geopolitical fragility and the raw supply chain choke points, we analyzed at the very top of this deep dive.
Yeah.
What happens to our physical mobility and our biological health when the next major global shock disrupts the exact highly specialized supply chains that these incredible new marvels rely on. Wow. It is a profound vulnerability. We have engineered brilliant bypasses around the traffic jam, but we are building those new roads out of highly sensitive, globally contested materials. The cargo ship of the global economy is still in that narrow canal, and the geopolitical winds are blowing harder than ever. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the connections in the world around you, and we'll catch you next time.